Welcome to another OdooSME video. My name is Matt Ojo-Bello. Today I'm going to show you how to use journals, how to manage journals in OdooSME. So let's go right inside. Journals are located in the accounting module. So I'm going to click on accounting. And once you get to this dashboard, you will find journals in advisor journal entries. So I can use both journal entries and journal items to post journals. Let me just pause for a moment and just explain the concept of journals in OdooSME. Now, virtually every transaction that is generated or posted in OdooSMEs are done using journals. Journals are the means by which transactions are posted into accounts. Remember, we had a video, and if you've not watched it, you should find that video that explains how to set up accounts in chart of accounts, or how to make up a chart of accounts in OdooSME. So to post transactions into those accounts, you will need to use journals. OdooSME uses journals for virtually every transaction, whether they are sales, purchases, cash and bank transactions, and even to correct entries. Miscellaneous journals, for example, can be used to post maybe transactions, to correct particular accounts, or even to book specific transactions like depreciation. And you can create your own journals. So that's the whole idea. Now, before we come to journal entries, it is assumed that you have already created journals from the configuration menu. So the journals that you'll be using to post, if you want to find them, if you want to use them, then they should be already set up under configuration journal. So let's go straight away and see how to create or manage a journal. So I'm going to go to configuration and then go to journals. So here you will find a number of journals that have been set up by default. We have bank journal, cash journal, exchange difference, miscellaneous operations, stock journals, vendor bills, and customer invoices. Now, these are journals that were preloaded or pre-shipped with OdooSME. I can create more journals, and I can also manipulate or modify any of these journals. Some journals are very clear. For example, a bank journal means that I can use this journal to post into a specific bank account or multiple bank accounts if that's what you want to do. And I can also use the cash journal to post petty cash transactions. This particular journal was created in the system, so you can use it to manage the exchange difference when you're dealing with multi-currency transactions. And of course, miscellaneous operations, depreciation journals, and any other journal that you would like to use, which are not any of these other ones that are listed. Stock journals are used to manage or to book the movement of stock, outgoing and ingoing stock items, and of course to manage the valuation of stock in the system. Vendor bills. Vendors are suppliers, so when we receive invoices from them and you want to post into OdooSME, then you will use journal called vendor bills. Apart from vendor bills, we also have customer invoices used to post invoices that we issue to our customers. So these are the various types of journal. To set up a journal is pretty easy, but let me just show you one of the journals so that you can appreciate it. Then we create one ourselves. So let's look at the bank journal, for example. If you open up the bank journal and put it in edit mode, you will find that a journal will have a journal name. A bank here represents the name of the journal. So a journal will have a journal name, e.g. bank. Now every journal must belong to a journal type. There are some types of journal that are already set up in the system. That means that a journal can either be a sales journal for posting sales transaction, a purchase journal for purchases from our vendors, a cash journal for cash transactions, bank journal for bank transactions, and then any other transactions you would like to post which cannot be classified as one of these first four. You would then use the miscellaneous journal. Now, because we're looking at a bank journal, so you will see that the type selected here is bank. There are three tabs here. This first tab talks about journal entry. So let's see how this bank journal is configured to be used to post journals or to post transactions. Once you set up a new journal, you will be able to specify a short code. A short code will be something that we can easily use to reference this journal. For example, the short code for this journal is called BNK1, BNK for short for the bank. There's also something that we call the entry sequence. So I'm going to show us. Normally, when you create a new journal, it automatically uses the name of the journal to name the entry sequence. So what exactly does the entry sequence do? I will explain that in a moment. Let's look at this right hand side where we have a default debit account and a default credit account. That means that whenever I use this journal, automatically, if I have a transaction where I need to do a debit, as long as I'm using this journal, the debit will automatically go to this specified account. And if I have a transaction which will use this journal, then the credit of that transaction will always go to that particular default account. If you don't want to specify a default account, there will be a reason not to do that in some other journals. You will not need to specify a default debit and credit account. So let's look at the entry sequence. I'm going to click on this small icon just to open that up very quickly. And you will notice that it says the name of the bank. The name of the bank. The other thing you'll find here is how do you want to implement this journal. Now there are two options there. The first one says standard and the other one says no gap. Now what happens with the standard is if I create a journal and let's say for some reasons I don't use the journal, then what will then happen is that number will be abandoned in the system. So that means I can have gaps in my journal. We call that option the standard option. The second option is no gap. Now no gap means that the system will try to close any gap it finds as a consequence of not using certain journals which were already created in the system. So if you delete a journal, for example, and you will never need it again, the system will try to reuse that number. There's something you need to be aware of, and you can find that in this little note that pops up when you mouse over this string. It says when there is no gap, it can make your transactions or the database to be a bit slower. Here it says the latter, which is the no gap is slower than the former. Obviously, the former is the standard. So between the standard and the no gap is slower than the former, but it forbids any gap in the sequence. Okay, while gaps are possible in the former, gaps are possible when you select standard. In most cases, you just want to leave this as no gap. It's not a problem at all. The next thing is, how do you manage the sequences? Now, this is very, very important. For example, what we're trying to do here is to give a naming convention. You know, when you set a code for your journal here, that code will then be used to number your journal. You can see the BNK1 here. Now, but sometimes it's also important that you want to maybe add a prefix or add a suffix to your journal. This journal normally will have numbered as BNK1, but there are also additional legends that you can add so that you get the advantage of adding whether a prefix or adding a suffix. Prefix means after this code. Suffix means something you can add before. So let's look at those legends. This particular one says if once you use this %sign bracket here and then S, it will number the journal with the current year in a currency form, so in a century form. So for example, if the year was 2015, then the journal will be numbered as something like BNK1/2015. So I can easily copy this legend, for example, the entire length of it, and then let's do a copy quickly, and then you can put that in this prefix. Okay, put it here as a prefix, and then once I save that, then my journals will be numbered. As I start numbering, they will have a prefix of BNK1/ maybe 2015 or 2016, as the case may be. And I can do that before I start numbering the journals. The next field here talks about sequence size. What the sequence size does is that it allows me to determine or define how many digits I want my journal to display. For example, if you had 4 as the sequence size, once I start numbering from 1, the system will automatically add a trailing 0, 3 zeros in this case, so that I can have the total number of digits come to 4, because my sequence size is 4. If my sequence size was 3, for example, that means that I'm looking at a journal that will have a maximum number of 3 digits, in which case the first journal, which will be journal 1, will not be numbered as 1. It will have 2 trailing zeros, so that it will be 001, and then it continues from there to 002, 003, and so on and so forth. If my sequence size is, for example, 6, then automatically you should know that there will be 5 trailing zeros, so that the journal will be numbered as whatever the prefix is, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 5 zeros, and then 1. And then, of course, the next one will be numbered serially accordingly too. Apart from prefix, we can also have a suffix. So it works the same way. This field called steps basically shows us, default is 1. It shows the next number of the sequence in your numbering. Normally, I will expect this to be 1 in virtually all situations. I have not seen a situation where you number journals and increment them by 2 or by 3 or by 4. Normally your journals will be serially numbered, so after 1 you will have 2, you have 3. So the steps, the incremental steps in this case will be 1. There are some other things that we can configure, but for now, let's just keep it very simple with this basic example that I've shown. So let's say, for example, I want to create my own journal. So what do? I go to journals and then I just say create. And here I will try to create another bank journal. I will call this one bank 2. Interestingly, do you know that if this was, for example, my Zenith Bank account, I could actually give this journal the name of the bank. That's the good thing about it. So it helps me to be able to identify which bank I'm talking about. And if possible, I might even add the account number 2233445566, whatever it is. Let's keep it at 10 digits. What type of journal is this? Obviously, this will be bank. Okay, and then it says the entry sequence. So if I save this, it is going to save. Let's try it. So once I save this, for example, you see, it sets the entry sequence with the name of my journal, just like I explained earlier on. So, and I can then manage the sequence. The other thing it does for me is it automatically links this journal to bank accounts in my general ledger or my chart of accounts, if you will. Okay, we'll come back and look at this very shortly. But let's go to the entry sequence. I'll put this in edit mode and then I go click that button so I can see what it looks like. So that's the name of the journal, right? And which is great, no gaps. Now, because it's a bank journal and we already had BNK1, so automatically we'll try to number this as BNK2. Okay, and I like to use this particular legend which talks about the current year with century. So let me use that as my prefix. So I'm going to replace it with that and then just do a paste. Okay, my cell size or my sequence size, just for demonstration, let's make this 5. So you can see the number of trailing zeros it will add before the journal. So this will help me. This should obviously help me to set up the journal. So I'm going to click save and then go back and do save. So this journal has been set up. That's all you do when you create journals. Like I said, you can create any type of journal at any time. Some have already been created for us. Be aware that we're talking about bank journals, cash journals, you know, and whatever journal you want to set up. Vendor bills are for suppliers, customer invoices are for customers. Right. So with our journal set up now, in another video, we will then show you how you can use these journals to manipulate or manage transactions. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you need help, don't forget to visit our website at www.OdooSME.com. At the bottom right corner, you will find a chat widget. Just click on it. If you have any of our support team online, they'll be very happy to help you. Thank you very much and see you next time.